Hi guys, Miss Shouter here. Today we're going to read the Cosmo-Biography of Sun Ra by Raschka. The sound of joy is enlightening. I love how colorful the cover is. We'll take a little sneak peek. Jazz musician Sun Ra always said that he came from Saturn. Being from another planet, he was naturally interested in everything earthly, especially music, because music is the one thing on Earth most like the stars. Now, you know and I know that no one comes from Saturn, and yet it would explain so much. Earthlings confused Sun Ra, the way they separated themselves by color and fought wars against one another. So he made music, and he traveled with other musicians and singers, calling themselves the Sun Ra Orchestra, playing, singing, and dancing for people all over the planet. Because music, he said, is what holds us all together. I wonder if these are like lyrics from one of his songs, or maybe something he said. The Cosmo-Biography of Sun Ra, The Sound of Joy is Enlightenment by Raschka. Sun Ra always said that he came from Saturn. Now you know and I know that this is silly. No one comes from Saturn. And yet, if he did come from Saturn, it would explain so much. Let's say he did come from Saturn. Well, on May 22nd, 1914, Sun Ra landed on Earth. Looking around, he found himself in Birmingham, Alabama. His parents named him Herman and called him Sunny. Being from another planet, Sun Ra was naturally interested in everything earthy: trees, clouds, and spotted dogs, apples, hot dogs, and corn on the cob, hats, socks, and wigs, drawing, dancing, and throwing a ball, and most of all, music. It was the thing about the earth that was most like the stars. It's not so surprising that Sun Ra was a musical genius. He was a fine piano player by the time he was 11. He would notate music that he heard on the radio or in dance halls. Sun Ra noticed the books in the library of the Black Masonic temple, and he spent many hours reading about the great philosophies of the earth, including Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry, which another musical genius, Mozart, had also been curious about. One thing puzzled Sun Ra. The Earthlings insisted on sorting themselves into two varieties, the white variety and the black variety. Sun Ra was sorted into the black variety. Also, the name his parents had given him, Herman Blount, hardly seemed the name of someone from Saturn. As soon as he could, Sun Ra changed his name to Basani Ra, and then simply to Sun Ra. As a teen Earthling, Sun Ra spent long afternoons at the Forbes Piano Company, where even though the store was owned by Earthlings of the white variety, he was welcome to play, compose, or just practice the piano. Before he left high school, Sun Ra was already a professional musician, leading his own ensemble and accompanying singers. Then Sun Ra saw the strangest thing. All over the globe, the Earthlings began fighting and killing each other. It was the Second World War. Sun Ra refused to join in. Questioning him, the Birmingham Draft Board understood that his conscience would not allow him to fight. Little did they know that he was from Saturn. So they designated him a conscientious objector. Instead of going to war, Sun Ra was sent to work in a forest in Pennsylvania. After the war, wishing to learn more about earthly music, Sun Ra traveled to Chicago to absorb its blues, doo-wop, and jazz. Sun Ra mastered all of these, both as a performer and a composer. So he played the music and he also made music. Sun Ra drew other musicians to him. They played in small groups, medium-sized groups, and big groups, with singers or without singers, all kinds of ways. They were like sailors on a boat bound for a new world of sound. And like all good sailors, they played and danced and sang while their captain, Sun Ra, steered the ship. They called themselves the orchestra. So we have Julian Priester, Pat Patrick, John Thompson, John Gilmore, Hobart Dotson, Richard Evans, Robert Barry, Jim Herndon, and Sun Ra, or Sunny Blow. Being from outer space, Sun Ra was afraid neither of electrons nor electricity, and so was one of the first musicians on Earth to use an electric keyboard. He played the mini-mu, the clavinet, and the Roxy chord. Salute all of those vocals. Between working at night and rehearsals in the morning, Sun Ra browsed in Chicago's bookstores or spent the long afternoons simply walking the city's streets and avenues. He was an intergalactic boulevardier. This left little time for sleeping. In his life on Earth, Sun Ra rarely slept for several hours in a bed. He took short naps throughout the day, and sometimes even dozing during his own rehearsals. When he woke again, he immediately continued with what he had just been doing. In the early 1960s, Sun Ra sailed with the orchestra to New York City. Though some New Yorkers complained that Sun Ra was too far out, what did they expect from a Saturnian? The wise ones, like Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk, said, "Keep it up, Sonny," and "Yeah, it's sweet." Would it surprise you that the orchestra made its own clothes? Robes of purple cotton, silk scarves, bone necklaces, and crowns of shining metal foil? From this time on, joining the orchestra meant being ready to live with the orchestra, rehearse with the orchestra, and perform with the orchestra, sometimes playing for many, many hours on end. The music might be crisp and tight one moment, then wild and free the next, changing with a nod of Sun Ra's head or a wave of his fingers. So there's Ronnie Boykin, Marshall Allen, and June Tyson. One disadvantage of coming from Saturn, though, was that Sun Ra could never really understand or care too much about money. The New York landlords, on the other hand, did, and kicked the orchestra out, so they sailed again, this time to Philadelphia, renting a house there. With Philadelphia as their home port, the orchestra traveled all around the earth, playing, singing, and dancing for people who spoke every language. Of all the places they visited, Sun Ra's favorite was where the Great Pyramids stand in the sands of Egypt. San Francisco, Philadelphia, Paris, Rome, Amsterdam, London, Berlin. At last, after 79 years, it was time for Sun Ra to say goodbye to the Earth and all his friends there. On May 30th, 1993, he returned to Saturn. Before he left, Sun Ra said, "You may think that it is gravity that holds us all together, but it is not. It is music." Sun Ra, who was born in 1914 in Alabama with the name Herman P. Sonny Blount, became a pianist, a composer, a conductor, a teacher, a businessman, and a poet. For most of the 20th century, Sun Ra made music that is still hard to define, perhaps because he loved all music, from the poppiest pop to the weightiest classic. Always, he created his life and his music his own way, even under the fabulous robes he and his orchestra, the orchestra, wore when they performed. Choosing to forego the traditional route of signing with a record label, Sun Ra released nearly all of his music independently. And here's some recordings of his from 1956 all the way to 1984. This is about the author. Chris Raschka has won 2 Caldecott medals, one in 2006 for the Hello Goodbye Window by Norton Juster, and another in 2012 for A Ball of Daisy, which he both wrote and illustrated. He is the acclaimed illustrator of many books for children, including the Caldecott Honor book, Yo, Yes? I Pledge Allegiance by Bill Martin Jr. and Michael Sampson, Dylan Thomas's A Child's Christmas in Wales, The Grasshopper Song by Nikki Giovanni, and A Poke in the Eye, A Kick in the Head, and A Foot in the Mouth, all edited by Paul B. Janesco. Chris Raschka lives in New York City. And that was the Cosmo-Biography of Sun Ra.